All right. The consensus is that it's 6 o'clock, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. I hope you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That's fortunate. Okay. Everybody on the ZBA has had a chance to review the agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as circulated. Next is approval of minutes from the March 30 regular meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Does anyone have any proposed changes to the minutes as circulated? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as circulated.
One question.
Okay,
It indicated that the minutes were approved 5-0 at the last meeting, but I didn't vote because I wasn't at the previous meeting, so I wasn't really entitled to vote.
well, then we should correct that. If you didn't vote, we don't want to assume that you
Because I
didn't.
wasn't here to vote, to know about it.
Okay. With that change, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes as modified.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
That'd be 4 of us. Nays? None. That moves us along to public comment on non-agenda items. This is a time in our meeting where if there's somebody who's come in to talk to us about something that isn't even on the agenda, we're interested in hearing from you. Does anybody want to talk about something that's not on our agenda? Apparently not. So we can then move on to action items. And our first item, number 1, is petition 26 ZBA 002. The applicant is Total Quality Construction, I think represented by Scott Lewis. Does anybody have any conflict of interest or ex parte contact that need to be discussed?
Well, I've had some email contacts with Mr. Gehling. Is it pronounced Gehling? Gehling? I don't even know how to pronounce his name. Anyhow, I had some email contacts and he asked if I would convey some land in front of his place. And I said, sure. And then I asked my attorney to draw up a quitclaim deed and it was done. And then there was some discussion about whether some of the parts that were in the conveyance belonged to me. And I said, I don't know, but Dexter Township at the time thought they did. And so my attorney contacted him and said that we got to check things out. And after some period of time, they worked out something and I executed a quitclaim deed, which said I convey the interest I have in particular in front of his place. And that was it. I've never talked to him after that. And I've never met him and I don't know what he looks like.
And I guess my additional question, as the attorney that you talked to, I would also mention that I was Tom's attorney in this matter. And I had no idea that this request for a variance was going to be coming before the ZBA. I'm assuming you did not know that and had never had any conversation with him. The only clarification I would add to what you said is that the quitclaim deed that you signed was actually prepared by Mr. Gehling's attorney. I reviewed it and we talked about it, but it was Mr. Gehling's attorney who drew that quitclaim deed. And I don't feel like I have any conflict in this matter. I had no idea that there would be a request for a variance. If anybody on the ZBA thinks to the contrary, we should discuss it.
Is this parcel that was conveyed or not conveyed? It's not clear to me whether it was actually conveyed. Well,
What-
whatever interest he
what-
had was
whatever-
conveyed,
Or Tom Eman owned.
was conveyed,
gave-
yes. Okay. Is that part of the property that we're just, is that?
It is.
Okay.
It is part of what they're using as the property that they want to get a variance on.
I have a problem, not with there being a conflict, but what that means, do we have to know whether you actually had an interest to convey and who owns the property if the conveyance did not go through?
I think that Fletcher can illuminate this better than I, but what we're asked to opine on at this point does not depend on total lot coverage. And lot coverage only comes into that's the only time that the Tom Eman parcel has any impact on anything. And our request for review has to do with
Setbacks.
dimensional setbacks,
Yes.
not lot coverage.
So the application would be the same irrespective of whether this parcel was,
Yes.
whether he can build this is another issue.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fletcher, did I say that correctly as far as you understand?
Yes, I would agree. We're here today to discuss two front yard setback variances. Where this conveyance comes into play is a small sliver of uplands between parcel 0401 300 014 and 015 going out into the bottomlands. Today, we're here to discuss just the 014 piece and the setbacks related to the home.
This has got nothing to do with the conflict, so I guess we should
Right.
move on from that and then we can move on to
Okay.
the.
Does anybody on the ZBA see an issue that needs to be resolved with respect to conflict? Hearing none, then I'm gonna say we should move along to staff presentation.
Good evening, Zoning Board of Appeals. Fletcher Ryer, Director, Planning and Zoning for Dexter Township. Today, we have before you a request from Total Quality Construction and Scott Lewis for the demolition of the existing home and detached garage and construction of a new two-story single-family dwelling with an attached garage at 9154 Dexter Pinckney Road. The applicant is requesting two variances, both from section 7.07, footnote 2 and 3. Both are required front yard setbacks. The existing zoning of the parcel is lake residential. The existing land use is lake residential, and the future land use map also dictates this as a lake residential area. The surrounding uses are all single family uses, vacant, or water bodies. Back in February, Scott Lewis submitted a zoning permit application to the township. And upon review of that application, it was determined that the proposed structure encroaches into the required front yard setback for both Lakeview Road and Dexter Pinckney Road. Currently on the site, there's a single-story, 1,025 square foot, 1920s era home with a 902 square foot detached garage. The applicant is proposing to demolish both structures on the site and to construct a new 3,500 square foot, two-story, single-family home with an attached garage. Section 7.072 requires a minimum 80-foot front yard setback from Dexter Pinckney Road. The applicant is currently proposing a 54 front yard setback, therefore requesting a 26-foot variance from that required setback. Additionally, the applicant's also seeking relief from section 7.073, which requires a 25-foot yard setback from Lakeview Road. The applicant is proposing a 16.9 foot front yard setback and is therefore requesting an 8.1 foot variance from the required setback. And just so the ZBA and audience knows, the existing structures on the lot, the existing home sits 5.5 feet away from Dexter Pinckney Road. The existing garage, 12.2 feet. So what they're proposing would sit back a little further from the road than what's currently existing. However, they're expanding outside of that original footprint, adding a second story, thus requiring the need for these two variances. And pause if you have any questions.
So you had mentioned 5.5 feet from Dexter Pinckney, not Lakeview.
Oh, Lakeview, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you for that correction. Sure.
You state that the dwelling was built in the early 1920s. The first Dexter Township ordinance was in the summer of 1961. So this whole structure is obviously legally non-conforming. Now they're proposing to make something more conforming. Why do they even have to have a variance?
Sure. So section 2405 of the zoning ordinance covers legally non-conforming structures. As you accurately said, that structure predates even the first township zoning ordinance. However, there's some strict limitations on replacing a legally non-conforming structure in the current zoning ordinance. And part of that requirement is that it's built in the original footprint and that any expansion meets today's standards. So essentially what the applicant proposed is, yes, they moved the house further back from Lakeview, but the second story is an expansion of that. And it's also encroaching into that setback. So
You're
they need,
talking about second story expanding into his airspace.
right, so the second story is in that front yard setback. It encroaches into it. It's considered an expansion. And that's why they're requesting these two
You
variants.
don't think that the zoning ordinance has some conditions in it that don't represent the existence of a legally non-conforming parcel, and the fact that somebody wants to make it more expanding has to come and beg to get a variance. That's not a practical difficulty.
Well, I do think that the ordinance does provide some leniency, but it's very strict. It needs to be that same footprint. The applicant could have knocked down the home and garage today, rebuild in the exact same footprint, 5 feet from the road, but it would need to stay a one-story structure. That's the way that the ordinance
You're going to deal
reads.
with.
Yeah.
But when the ordinance, and I'm talking not about this thing, but the ordinance itself that we have to recognize, enacts new instructions that now make things that were legal, illegal, or require variances, that's a taking. It absolutely is a taking, because people had this right to do this, and as long as they stayed in the same footprint, they could do that. But if they wanted to expand to be more conforming, but not on the same footprint, they're penalized. That's a taking.
That may be the case.
That's
but
something that the planning commission should be looking
I
at.
think that would be,
Recommending to the zoning board,
I
to the
think that'd be a
township
good
board.
plan, is for the planning commission to take a look at.
Huh?
I think the planning commission could consider that.
They're working on it.
No, I think they could if they wished to.
Oh, I think they could if they wish to.
Well, moving on with the report, I do want to emphasize that it's quite unusual to to have dual front yard setbacks in this specific context. Township anticipates corner lots that have two front yards, does not anticipate a regular lot having two front yard setbacks on one front yard line. Under typical conditions, a residential lot has a single street frontage. This one, as you can see, has two. It abuts Lakeview and Dexter Pinckney Road. This essentially squeezes the building envelope that the applicant can put a house into because of this. If I had to guess, I think this stretch of Dexter Pinckney Road is probably the only place in the township where this occurs. I was trying to find other cases where this matches and couldn't. And it may be a good candidate for the PC to look at this in the future for this specific stretch of road.
In the 1974 edition, the 80 feet was all on the south side of Dexter Pinckney Road, not on both sides. Because the 1974 ordinance recognized what was going along the lakes.
Moving on to some current nonconformities, as mentioned by this board here. The house predates any zoning ordinances here in Dexter Township, but when comparing it to today's standards, the minimum lot size is currently not met. Front yard setbacks aren't met. The side yard setbacks aren't met for the detached garage. And the current house encroaches into that front yard setback. The applicant is in the audience today. I'm sure they have some items to present, but if you have any questions about this report, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Or,
Sorry.
yeah,
The parcel that we were discussing previously, if that is not part of this application, are they able to proceed?
So
Will this plan is this plan buildable without that parcel?
the applicant would need to demonstrate ownership of the uplands towards the shoreline to accommodate lot coverage standards. And that could be done administratively during the permitting process. And the township could issue a permit once that's satisfied.
So that he needs to show ownership of that to proceed with this plan at some point in the process.
Mhm. Yep. County records and township records
Yes.
currently show and tax the property owner as if he owns that strip of land. However, the survey attached to the plans show a roughly 5,600 square foot
Yes.
parcel.
Yes.
When the shoreline piece would add another couple thousand, it would go up to about 7,200 square feet or 7,800 square feet to accommodate those lot coverage standards. So there's a question as to who owns that strip.
Yeah, the deed records show that they don't own it. Okay. And I don't know whether Michigan is a deed state or how title works in Michigan. My concern about us proceeding, that's why I'm making a deal with this. How do we know he can even build this?
I guess.
Or that he's even got a right to apply for it?
But,
if he
but
can't-
Peter, if he's only asking for a variance for the front yard setback from the roads, that's the only thing that's before us. And at that point, it's up to the Director of Planning and Zoning and the applicant to go forward with the permitting process. And I think what Fletcher has said is that before they would issue a final permit, they'll have to be convinced of a claim, a viable claim to enough square footage to satisfy the requirements. But it's not before, our whole approach tonight, I believe, is whether or not we should grant a variance for the road setbacks.
Well, and just to add to that, maybe I'm wrong, but if they didn't own that, they would have to come back and renotice and do the process again for the lot coverage,
That's
which
what-
is not noticed here. So they would end up having to pay the fee anyway to come back, I believe. Like, because it wasn't noticed with this packet.
The land that's under the water is subaqueous. It can't be counted under the ordinance for lot area. So it doesn't have anything to do with tonight because it doesn't affect the applicant.
That's correct. The township never counts bottomlands, lake bottomlands when calculating lot coverage. There is, however, a question as to a small sliver of upland between that bottomland and the end of the parcel ending in 014 from what we found in our title search.
But I have a deed, authority deed to the land, to the shore. So I had a right to convey that.
We can talk through this during the permitting process if the board moves forward with a decision tonight.
Okay? Any other questions for the Director of Planning and Zoning? Then I think we're ready for petitioner presentation.
Microphone's on, there's a green button on the side.
Testing.
Good.
Janice, did that sound good to you? Good.
I'm Scott Lucas, representative of Public Quality Construction. Thank you all for being here tonight. I guess I'm a little bit taken back with the direction this has gone. What my understanding with Fletcher was that since he was being taxed for that land, that we were going to consider it under the lot coverage because he is being taxed on that land, even though there's issues with a link in the chain, as you can quote from some communication that's been happening, a missing link in the chain. So so it's news to me that that's even being brought up right now.
Don't worry about it.
Secondly, back to the reason we're here today, the current home and the state of it is it's non-livable, it doesn't have electric, doesn't have gas. It's someone's gonna have to build it. If you look at the lot itself, it's a small lot. It's not a lot of room from the private road, Lakeview Drive and the lake. And there's also not much room compared to its neighbors down the way a little bit from Dexter Pinckney to the lot itself. So we're already non-conforming. We're trying to comply with the zoning ordinance as best we can. If you look at, I'm not sure what page number it's on. It's the current proposed plot plan. I had a reference line put on there just so you guys can see. It's at the front, in the front corner of the neighboring houses. It's a dashed line that comes across to show that we're in conformance with the neighboring houses. We're not sticking in front of it. I know the neighboring house on the left has a 1.5 stories, so we're not completely out of on height. The house is a, be a great fit for the lake. And, we've been working really diligently to work with Fletcher and the zoning ordinances to get this, to comply as much as we possibly can with the non-conforming issues that we really are kind of out of our control. So, that's my spiel.
Okay.
Do you have any questions?
Questions for the applicant? Questions for the applicant? Tom? Tom, any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That brings us along to reading of the letters into the record. Do you have any letters about this particular matter?
There's no correspondence received.
And is there anyone here that would like to address the ZBA on this variance request? Hmm? Okay, so they're all with you. All right, apparently nobody wants to talk about this. That leaves us to ZBA deliberations. Your thoughts?
I don't see how there's not a practical difficulty building in this area. It just simply
The
is.
whole
one.
area is a practical difficulty. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Tiny lot and,
Anyway.
Well, I think the present zoning ordinance, which is a dramatic departure from the 1974 ordinance, is foolish. And I think they ought to fix it, because the whole idea is to try to give people an opportunity to improve stuff, as it says in the heading of the legally non-conforming section, provided it doesn't impact the neighbors or the health, safety, and welfare of the community.
okay.
And the
So would
intent
you
was-
say there's a practical difficulty here?
I think there's a great.
Okay. All right. And,
I know in the
And-
past CBAs have been reluctant to look at their own ordinance as a practical difficulty.
I don't think we have to go that far in order to
Okay.
decide this case.
But what they want to do is they want to make it more conforming. And in doing so, they're not encroaching any closer to the right of way than the adjoining parcels, so nobody is adversely affected. I think it's a wonderful idea.
Okay? Peter, do you have any thoughts that we need to consider about this?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's,
Um, I think we're pretty close to being able to vote on this. I need to let you folks know that in order to get your variance, you need to get the affirmative vote of 3 of the members of the ZBA on all of the questions that are asked. And we only have 4 of us here tonight, which makes the process of getting 3 votes not quite as easy as it would be if there were 4 of us. And under these circumstances, we often ask the applicant, having heard our conversations now, would you like us to proceed to vote on your application? Or would you like us to put this off to another meeting where we might be fortunate enough to have all 5 of our members appear?
So, yeah, clarify, so would they be reviewing this video and voting separately from?
No, it'll be another meeting and we
Oh, it has to
do
be
all of
voted on.
this, yes.
So regardless, it's gotta get pushed off to the next meeting.
Well,
No.
if we do that, but we can go ahead this evening as long as you understand that you're going for 3 out of 4 instead of 3 out of 5.
So, please.
Okay, happy to do it. All right, let's go through our tests here. Just have to figure out which page that's all on.
12.
Oh, yeah, 12. The problem with getting these, the stack is, I don't know where 12 is.
Page 12 and page 14.
Okay,
Or do you not have?
I was close.
You were close.
The numbers are right on the page.
Yeah, it's weird though. He's got,
How about 12 and 14, 12 and 13?
oh, you
All
got
right,
it?
I am ready to roll. Okay, so here we are, question one, practical difficulty. That's 2906C1. The strict application of the terms of this ordinance would constitute a practical difficulty. And it looks to me like we're voting on
Section.
you have these set up for us to vote
Twice.
twice, and we're not, and we haven't structured this to vote twice at the same time. We have to go through it twice.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna start out with the variance for the 80-foot setback from Dexter Pinckney Road, which is the one I was just talking to you about. And the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would constitute a practical difficulty on the 80-foot variance request. We'll need a yes or no from each of the board members. Tom?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. Next is number 2, physical condition, 2906C2. The practical difficulty is due to some physical condition peculiar to the property involved. Again, this is on the 80-foot setback.
yes,
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Peter? Chair votes yes as well. Self-created, 2906C3. Practical difficulty is not self-created. Tom?
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. Clearly, circumstances existed long before this applicant came before us. For reasonable amount necessary, 2906C4. The variance is a reasonable amount necessary to mitigate the practical difficulty. Tom? Beth?
Yes, and I would just say that this is actually an improvement over what was there already, so yes.
Okay, Peter?
Yes.
Chair votes yes as well. 5, public health, safety, and welfare. Approval of the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and welfare.
I hope not, yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Chair votes yes as well. Again, looks like it's going to be a big improvement to the neighborhood. 6, adjacent properties, 2906C6. Approval of the variance will not affect the use of the adjacent properties or the area in a substantially adverse manner.
not substantially.
Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
and chair votes yes as well. 7, intent of the ordinance. Does the requested variance meet the following standard? Approval of the variance is consistent with the intent and purpose of the ordinance. Tom?
I'm not sure what that intent is, but I'll say yes.
Okay, Beth?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. And now let's start through them again for the 25-foot setback. Again, practical difficulty, the strict application of the terms of the ordinance would constitute a practical difficulty. This is the 25-foot variance.
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Peter? Chair votes yes as well. Physical condition, the practical difficulty is due to some physical condition peculiar to the property involved. Tom?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Clearly, the lot is very small and it would be pretty much impossible to develop it without a variance. 3, self-created, 2906C3. The practical difficulty is not self-created,
Yes.
Yes.
and chair votes yes on that. 4, reasonable amount necessary. The variance is a reasonable amount necessary to mitigate the practical difficulty. Tom?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. 5, public health, safety, and welfare. approval of the variance will not be injurious to the public health, safety, and welfare.
Yes.
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Peter? Chair votes yes. 6, adjacent properties, 2906C6. The approval of the variance will not affect the use of the adjacent properties or the area in a substantially adverse manner.
Yes.
Yes.
And chair votes yes as well. 7 and 10 of the ordinance, 2906C7. Approval of variance is consistent with the intent and purposes of the ordinance. Thomas. Another intent and purposes question. We're ready for one more vote on intent and purposes.
Yes.
Yes.
Chair votes yes as well. I think we've got the requisite number of positive votes on this.
I'd like to make a
If you'd like to
motion.
make a motion,
Yeah.
please do.
Okay. I would like to move to approve the variances for requested for property 9154 Dexter Pickney Road, Pickney, Michigan, 48137, parcel D 0401-300-014. That's ZBA petition number 26 ZBA-002. For the variance from ordinance section 7.072 for the proposed setback of 54 feet, a 26-foot variance from the 80-foot setback from Dexter Pickney, and to a variance to section 7.073 for a 16.9-foot setback or a 8.1-foot variance from the 25-foot setback from Lakeview Road.
Support.
Will there be any conditions on that?
While recognizing the legal nonconformities.
Okay. Okay, Tom supports. All right, let's vote on this. Tom,
Gonna discuss it?
do you want to discuss it?
I don't want to.
Anybody want to discuss it?
Any condition?
Well, any
Yes.
other conditions other than the recognition of the existing?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, what?
He's seconding the motion?
You're seconding the motion or
Seconding the no, I'm.
You're voting.
Voting for the.
Okay.
Motion.
You want to vote?
If Peter seconds my motion, I'll vote.
Tom, but was Tom second?
Tom, you seconded?
Yeah.
All right, then yes. Sorry,
Peter?
Tom.
Are we voting now?
We are now voting.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes as well. Congratulations, your variance has been approved. Be aware that you've got a year to take some kind of action on this or it expires. Doesn't have to be that you get started, but at least you got to talk to Fletcher within that year about why you can't. Okay?
Wonderful, thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you. And that allows us now to move on. Just have to find where that is again.
Love you. Page 44.
Page 44. huh?
Correct. Yeah.
It's not. Okay, we're on to item 2, 26 ZBA 003. This is Dexter Builders with Randy Relford. About 711 Noah's Landing in Gregory. I don't know where it goes from there, but I believe we're ready for a report from Fletcher.
Good evening, Zoning Board of Appeals. Fletcher Ryer, Director of Planning and Zoning. Today we have before you a request from Randy Rayford with Dexter Builders for the construction of a one-story residential addition and an enclosed porch at 7511 Noah's Landing. The applicant is requesting a variance from section 7.073 required front yard setback and section 7.02 required water body setback. The property in question is zoned Lakes Residential. The future land use map, also Lake Residential, and it's 0.181 acres. This parcel does have a history of ZBA requests. Back in 2003, the previous owners requested a variance from the front yard and water body setbacks to construct a 22.5 foot by 30.7 foot second story addition to the existing home. The previous ordinance required a 50-foot front yard setback from Noah's Landing and a 50-foot water body setback. They were granted a 16-foot front yard setback and a 48-foot water body setback. The previous owners also came to the ZBA in 2006. They were granted another variance for an addition and received a variance for a 18-foot 6-inch front yard setback and a 48-foot water body setback. Those plans were never implemented, and that has since expired. If you remember last year, the applicants came to this board with a request for a similar project. They have since modified those plans and have come back to this board tonight. So the original request in the current request is a 512-foot square foot addition. There's no change to that. The front covered porch in today's plans is 26 square feet smaller than the original request, coming out to 130 square feet. The screened-in porch also reduced in size by 13 square feet, from 140 square feet to 127 square feet. The applicant is seeking relief from section 7.073, which requires a 20-foot, 5-foot front yard setback for parcels located in the Lake Residential Zoning District on local and private roads. The current home is set back 16 feet from Noah's Landing. Bear with me a moment.
They are.
So
I got it.
stepping back a moment, I'm going to discuss the front yard setback. So in 2003, the township granted the previous owners a 34-foot front yard setback to accommodate the construction of a second floor addition. The second floor addition was built 16 feet from Noah's Road right-of-way when the zoning ordinance at the time only permitted a 50-foot setback. The proposed addition would place the covered porch 11 feet 5 inches from Noah's Landing. The main building would remain 16 feet 5 inches from Noah's Landing. The township does allow projections into a front yard setback. However, since the applicant's already encroaching into that, section of the ordinance does not matter for this case. In addition to that front yard setback, the applicant seeking relief from section 7.02 required water body setbacks. That ordinance requires a 50-foot water body setback, a minimum of 35 feet for structures. The proposed screened-in porch would encroach into that water body setback by 11 feet. Thus, the setback from the water would be 39 feet.
What is it now?
Currently, the house is 50 feet from the shoreline.
So they're creating a non-conforming.
That's correct. They would encroach further out. And staff wanted to clarify a difference between this application and the last application. But we also, at the time, interpreted that the applicant would need a variance from section 16.34 which creates a straight line between adjacent homes and does not allow an encroachment past that line. However, after further review, it was determined that the applicant actually just needs to comply with section 7.07. And how that setback works is that it's a 50-foot setback. The existing home is located 50 feet from the water. The proposed screened-in porch projects 11 feet closer to the water, resulting in a 39-foot setback. Section 7.02 requires a water body setback of 50 feet or as measured in section 16.34, whichever is less, but never less than 35 feet. Gets a little confusing, but essentially that 50 feet is less than that straight line. Thus, we would base our setback off of section 7.02.
So just to be sure, if you were to draw a straight line between the adjoining structures on either side, this would not encroach into past that straight line.
So it does, however, less in this case would be greater. 50 feet is further back than that straight
Okay.
line, right?
Yeah,
So we're basing this water body setback just on that
On the
provision,
50
not the
alone.
straight line provision. Now, where that straight line provision would come into play is if that straight line, essentially if they were closer to the water, that would come into play, like 40 to 35 feet, closer than the 50 feet currently. That would come into play and is usually comes into play on Portage Lake, where the homes are a little closer together. But, staff had to reevaluate that provision of the ordinance and brainstorm a little bit when working with the applicant on these revisions.
Okay.
To recognize some nonconformities, lot size is smaller than the 0.5 acres required. The current front yard setback requirement's 25 feet. However, the current structure is encroaching into that. Like I stated previously, in 2003, variance was granted to encroach into that. And then currently, the minimum gross floor area of the home doesn't meet today's standards. However, with the addition, that would become conforming with today's standards. One other comment for the board's consideration is that the adjacent lot south of the home has a deed restriction prohibiting the ability to combine or build on that lot. For the sake of this application and how it's written in the ordinance, we can use that vacant lot for lot coverage standards and setback standards. However, it just can't be built on due to that deed restriction. But it does act as a continuous parcel for the applicant in terms of zoning regulations.
Questions?
Questions, and it has to do with this chart. You gonna look at that?
Sure.
First, looking at the 25 or 702 front yard setback, the requirement of 25 feet. And then I see 11.5 under proposed existing. Do you mean that that's an existing legally non-conforming front yard?
What I mean by that is what's being proposed. So that's not existing. That's what's being proposed and
That's what's being proposed with a porch.
correct. Yep.
And what is the legally non-conforming front yard?
16 feet
16 feet.
from 2003. Yep.
So he's asking to get in there 5.5 inches rough.
5.5
Okay.
feet.
Next, under the side yard requirement, proposed existing is 3.3. I assume that that's a legally non-conforming side yard.
Correct. Yep, they are
Over
not.
here in the box, all it talks about is this is non-conforming. It doesn't say it's legally non-conforming.
Right.
So if it's legally non-conforming, why doesn't that say yes instead of no?
It should say legally non-conforming. And also the applicant's not touching that side of the home, and increasing any non-conformity.
Not increasing any,
Correct.
because I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I appreciate you pointing that out, Tom. I could certainly be more clear with the staff reports.
Now, when we're talking about the water body, I understand 50 feet is required. And it looks like there's already an existing porch there that must have been granted a variance at some point. Or else the Midnight Construction Company just put it there, I don't know. But what's that 39 feet? Is that what you think is established backyard?
So the 39 feet is where the new proposed enclosed porch would sit adjacent to the water. So,
And it's adjacent to an existing porch, it's also at 39.
right, but they're creating a structure. Decks are measured differently than 4 walls and a roof. So if they were to keep the deck as is, we wouldn't be talking about this water body setback. But since they're adding a screened-in porch or sunroom of sorts, it's
Oh,
it's considered
the
a
covered structure as opposed to the empty.
right. So it's considered part of the house, even though, it's not livable 365 of the year. They'll be out there in the summertime, but not in the dead of winter.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for the Director of Planning and Zoning?
I have a very quick question. The entire 4.5 feet that they want to increase the nonconformity, that's all caused by the front porch.
There's an existing uncovered porch in front of that. That's 6 feet from the face of the house. We're reducing that to 5 feet, but we're requesting that it be covered.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yep, and covered porches are looked at differently than uncovered and ground level porches. It's essentially a extension of the house inside an encroachment already. So we're just basing our measurement off of that.
Other questions for the Director of Planning and Zoning? I guess it's probably somewhat hypothetical, but in the area of Noah's Landing, how do you know where Noah's Landing is?
Yeah.
There is 2 of them.
Well, no, what I meant was even to the east of this home, it looks to me like the place that the people are driving is further away from the residence than it is shown on the plans, that the east lot line of their property doesn't go all the way to the part of the road that people actually appear to be driving on. Is that accurate?
That's
Okay.
correct. These old private roads have taken many shapes over the last century and have changed significantly over time and do not match.
Okay, and so I guess my
current
question
plans.
is, have you had to deal with that before? So I have a sort of a personal question about this. Probably wouldn't come before you because it's in the part of my property that's in Livingston County. But But the road that is in front of my house on the plat just drives itself right up into my yard and that's not where the road is at all. It's significantly further east than where it's shown on the plat. And has Dexter Township had to deal with that situation, or we just say, yeah, it's where it's drawn, it's on the map, it's where it is.
Usually the latter.
On the
We
map, it's
rely
where it
on,
is.
we rely on surveys and
Yeah.
staking and for the property owners on these private roads to
Okay,
handle the development appropriately.
okay. So for years, they'll still have to acknowledge the existence of the private road at a location where the private road isn't actually located.
Unless the homeowners want to say otherwise
Okay,
and I guess improve said road to the correct
yeah,
location.
They could never create that road, even under the 74 ordinance, because it had to be at least 66 feet wide.
yeah,
So the emergency equipment could get down there.
right. Okay, all right. Any other questions for the Director of Planning and Zoning? I think we're ready to hear from the applicant then. Janice, is he live?
There we go. There we go. Good evening, Chairman Smith and board members, staff. First, I'd like to start off with a comment about who you got over here was your zoning and planning guy.
You identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Randy Rayford. My address is 7760 3rd Street in Dexter, and I'm representing Dexter Builders in Indiana. But it as just the discussions tonight, you can see how these zoning ordinances are confluted and you know, it's written with one intention in mind, but then another situation comes up that totally throws it for a loop. And I think Fletcher does a great job in applying a little common sense to some of the language in there. So I think you got a keeper over there. We came back, we were in front of you first of all, and I think it was October. And we heard the concerns of the board members at the time. And so we went back to the drawing board and we really listened to what we heard. And so we tried to modify the plan that would make it a little bit more palatable. And so what we did is the first iteration had a screen porch on the north side of the property, which is right adjacent to the neighbor. The neighbor's house is about 5 feet away. And it would substantially block their enjoyment of the view of the lake. And so the first thing that we did is we moved the screen porch to the south side of the property. And we even shortened it so that there would be a walkway on the existing deck to get in front of that screen porch. And so that took the line of sight from the neighbor's property right out of the picture. And then the first iteration, we were trying to get a 6-foot covered porch. And we heard some concerns about that, and so we shortened it to 5 feet, which again is less, it encroaches less than what the uncovered porch does today. But the applicant still would like the enjoyment of that covered porch. And what is really the practical difficulty in this whole application is the lot size relative to the setbacks. Fletcher talked about them owning the adjacent parcel, but again, they can't build on it. You know, it helps a little bit in that it increases the side yard setback, but not by much. And so they literally have like 880 square feet is their building envelope. And so they're never gonna have a garage. And so they're just trying to improve this property so that they can age in place and enjoy it with their kids and grandkids as they grow old. And so that's what we're here to propose tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the plans or what our thought process is.
Questions for the applicant? None. There you go.
Good thing or bad?
It's interesting to think about it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Do we have any letters that we need to consider, Fletcher?
No letters received regarding this request.
Okay, I thought there were letters.
Here as well.
No letters other than the ones that were in
In
our
the
packet.
packet.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
everybody's read their packets, right?
Oh, okay, additional and.
Okay. Is there anybody here tonight that would like to address us on this application? Step up one at a time, tell us who you are and what you have to say.
Yeah, my name's Joe Holowinky. I live at 7500 Otis Landing. We're neighbors of Mike and Kathy Dorsey's. They're great neighbors. We are looking forward to them to get more room so they have the grandkids and the kids. It's just totally exciting for them. So we hope you approve it.
Thank you.
My name is Melanie Johnson. I have a cottage at 7481 Noah's Landing on that little trail. And my house will now look to the screen porch, and I have absolutely no problem with it because I'm the closest house to look at the screen porch. No problem whatsoever.
Thank you. Anybody else that would like to address the ZBA on this application? Of course.
So I want to speak to the water bottom setback, excuse me, and that, the section 16, portion of it allows for a setback of no less or no more than 35 feet. And so it's kind of vague when that condition is applicable. But you know, we're requesting a setback of 39 feet, so somewhere in your ordinance, 35 feet would be okay. And so we're hoping that, that again, you'll consider that that the 39 feet is within some portion of that ordinance, however it applies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that moves us along to deliberations. Anybody have any thoughts on this? We'll let them do it. What do you think? My thought is that what they're seeking is reasonable given the size of the lot. I think I'm still convinced that Noah's Landing isn't as close to their front door as is shown on the drawings. I think there's enough room there. I think that if Noah's Landing were where it appears, it would be running through the side of the house to the north. And so I just think that this is a reasonable request to deal with a practical difficulty.
Well, I think one is and one isn't. So I will be voting one way on one of them and another way on another one.
Okay, well, let me address then the one that I think you'd be more troubled by, which is the covered porch. Is that right?
Exactly.
And I see that as more of an issue, but in this particular location, I guess I'm inclined to say that given the size of the house and the other constraints that are imposed on it, the giving a variance for a water body setback for an enclosed porch doesn't give me any heartburn, but others may differ.
Would it make Peter feel better if we were to say, include the language sometimes that we have included in the past in the motion along the lines of as substantially shown and described? You know, would that language make you feel better in terms of particularly for location? Because in terms of the location, having it closer to the south side of the lot, it's impinging less on the northern neighbor.
I think they've done an excellent job
Yeah,
in creating a project that the neighbors support.
yeah.
I think that's great. I like the project. I'm in a way philosophically opposed to creating a brand new nonconformity in an area that's already greatly nonconformed. Unless it really is a necessity for the construction to happen. And I don't think in this case, it meets it's not persuasive enough for me as a necessity to create a new nonconformity. So I'm sort of philosophically opposed to it. I don't think the impact is all that great. I just don't like the idea of it.
That's fair. Would any of the other ZBA members have a difficult time if I added the language as,
Not at all. And I guess, I don't know how far you want to go with that, but we're talking about an open porch with no plan to enclose it and make it be a four-season
right,
room.
right.
I feels good to me.
I'm looking at the front porch
Mhm.
overhang. I don't know if it's an overhang or if it's porch and an overhang. But there's no place to park the cars on that lot except parallel to that space. And it's only 9.5 feet wide. Now, I know they own some other land, but I don't know if there's any restrictive covenants that they can't use that to park cars on. So, I mean, they got a lot of land, but they have no possibilities really to use it like you'd think to use it.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel about their variance request?
I would think that they got some practical difficulties.
Okay, all right. Well, I guess we've all kind of expressed our views on this, and so at this point, I would also mention to the applicants that there are only 4 members of the ZBA here tonight. You have to convince 3 of us to approve the variance in order to get it. If you would like to, you can adjourn, or you can ask us to postpone this to a later time to see if we can get a full quorum. Otherwise, we'll proceed and decide what we want to do.
Question process, if you were to vote no on the variance, what would be our recourse as far?
You could appeal our decision to the court, the circuit court. Nope. Yeah,
Everything in the township that's administrative is appealable,
yes.
everything.
Are we the body that hears appeals from the rulings of the zoning administrator?
Yes.
I'm surprised we never get any.
We've had excellent zoning administration.
Must be.
Yeah, I've
No,
only,
we have had, yeah.
since 2015,
Wow.
maybe 2.
We'd like to go ahead and vote, please.
Okay. Well, then, let's move along with our standards of review, which fortunately the chair has put his hands on for this one. Number one, we're talking about the front yard setback of 11 feet 5 inches instead of 25 feet.
Excuse me, something just came to mind. If, since if if the front porch, the covered front porch is denied, would that mean the addition would be denied as well, because that's extending in the same plane as the front of the house? So we wouldn't be able to build the addition at all. The front porch.
You need to come in with a different submittal. Just showing the addition.
But we would still need a front yard setback. It's still an addition. That's not, they're voting on, whether or not you grant the variance. Is there a way to modify our request to not include that front porch?
So I think the plans would be substantially different without that 26 by 5 foot covered porch.
In front, or you're talking about this thing in front?
Mm-hmm. I don't think we can modify it this late in the process.
Okay, so again, to understand, if the front porch variance isn't requested, then
So
the
you're,
entire additions denied.
think of it as the addition variance. We're just basing the measurement on where that front porch ends. So it's for everything, including the front porch.
I'm not clear. What you say when it's everything. Meaning the addition.
The addition plus the covered porch is what they're voting on tonight.
All or none. But the front yard variance we're asking for is 5 feet less than what the variance would be for the addition. Or 5 foot more than what the variance would be for the addition. If we were building this without the front porch, we would still have to come to you for a front yard setback request.
Right. Right. Today, we're looking at the addition. We just based our measurement the end of that covered porch.
Could could the board, no, could they, if the consensus is to not allow the front porch, could you approve it to the setback of the face of the house? So that we could continue?
I'm not clear, Fletcher, on even what we're speaking of here. What I think is before us this evening is to change the front yard setback to 11.5 feet. Is there something other than the front porch that would be in that 11.5 foot setback, or requires the 11.5 foot setback?
The base of the existing house is 16.5. So that addition would require a setback. Okay.
Yeah. It's an expansion. To the side.
I don't see how at this stage, having noticed it for this evening at 11.5, we can do anything other than vote on the request for 11.
That's correct. The notice said construction of a one-story residential addition, an enclosed porch. We are measuring the setback based on the end of that covered porch out front. Essentially, it's all wrapped in one. That's what we're here today to look at.
So we would minimize the variance requests in terms of like number of feet from 11 and a half to
It'd be 6.
16 and a half, which is already there, but because it's an expansion to the south, we would still have to grant the variance for the expansion. Would you feel comfortable modifying the variance that way?
No.
I agree. I think we should either
Just
vote or
roll
not
with
vote,
it,
either,
yeah.
either vote or not vote on the applications that are before us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the condition of the board be that the setback is not 5.5 feet or whatever that number is, but you can grant it to 16.
We
inches.
could, I
have
believe
not
we
a-
could grant a variance of 37 inches if we wanted
Yeah.
to.
I mean, we
But
have,
we don't know precisely what that number is. In part because we don't have documents.
It's on the survey.
yeah,
So what I don't wanna have happen is the whole project. It's-
Well, here's, again, here's what I'm offering you, and I hadn't offered you, let's negotiate. What I had offered you was, we can vote on this tonight and there are only 4 of us, or we can put it off until next month and see if we can get 5, and so you got, the dice work better for you. But I don't have, door number 3 isn't out there as far as I'm concerned, and I'm still a little confused about how we would do this as a negotiation down to a different point.
the other concern I have is would this be an implicit admission on behalf of the applicant? That it's not, this is where that reasonable versus minimum amount
Yeah,
necessary.
exactly. mean,
I want you to be reasonable.
Yeah.
Right, so I don't. So I guess the question is, do we feel comfortable modifying this? So we can't do two, if you don't mind me saying, we can't do 2 sets of votes for the same. We would just
I
have to
understand.
modify it and do that single vote, I believe is. So if you want to proceed, we can proceed, but if you don't, and you want to modify it, we could, with the chair's approval and the approval of the board, potentially modify it, but you would feel uncomfortable with that because you haven't seen, you're not.
I guess I didn't look at the plans and think about, how would we do this if we didn't do the front
If we
porch?
didn't do the porch.
What would it look like? What do the drawings look like without the front porch?
I think this is a bad way to do this.
I agree.
That's just
Yeah.
I'm a big
You're-
process and procedure guy.
Yeah.
and process
See, our
oriented
process and
procedures.
procedure guy doesn't like this, so there you have it.
You don't.
Well, I'm just one person
Oh.
expressing an opinion, that's all.
We'd request to come back when there's a full.
Okay. Table it.
Full.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd entertain a motion to postpone.
I would like to make a motion to postpone this proceeding until next month, provided that we can proceed next. month.
Or until the next available meeting date. I understand, we already understand there's a problem with at least one of our members being here next month.
I don't think there's anything on the agenda for next month.
Well, and, but
We could-
May 5th would be the next available meeting. The applicant should be aware. Peter won't be present.
Peter won't be present.
The good news is that what was noticed is the same as what they would come back with.
Right.
Just
Okay.
minus a front covered porch and a different number for the front yard setback.
Okay.
okay. All right, so do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to table this into our next.
I think the word is postpone.
Postpone
We're
this.
Supposed to use.
Yeah, I'd like to postpone the remainder of this hearing until the next meeting of May 5th.
Okay.
Now, postponing 4 people next month, or did you want to pull seated
ZBA board, because that would be then in June.
Maybe.
If he's not gonna be here, we'd like to know.
You're making assumptions. You might be surprised.
Peter might be here just because.
I can step on the gas a little harder and get back here.
All right, so, I mean, that's your situation. We may not have a full board. We gotta look into what's happened to our alternate, but.
Yeah. Anybody want to second the motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Sir,
I find it very uncomfortable sitting here making these people in the audience squirm, trying to decide whether they should roll their dice and deal with us tonight or wait some other time. I mean, I don't like the whole setting. And I think that to begin with, when these people come to zoning, to the director of planning and zoning, he of course explains to them what the rules are and what we have to follow and what we're likely to do, and he should be in a position to tell them what we're likely to do.
I don't want him
So
ever
that
to
we
tell
don't
them
have
what
to
I
get here.
think we're gonna do.
We don't have to get here. I'm just saying likely. They can roll their dice in his office, not come here at night and roll their dice after making the same presentation to us that they make to him. So I'd like to get them off the hook so they can make a decision tonight.
Okay. So far, there's a motion on the floor to adjourn. And this is discussion on that
No,
motion.
not to adjourn, to postpone.
Postpone, sorry,
Agenda.
but is it seconded?
I was thinking.
Okay, it's seconded. So we got a
I'm
motion
discussing the motion.
to postpone. And your thought is we ought to proceed. And I appreciate the logic of that, but I also do know that in the
It's
past,
their choice.
we have said, look, we try to have 5 people here on the understanding that you got to get a 60% of us to go along with you. And on a night where we only have 4 people, then you got to get 75%. And that's a little bit harder. And especially it's hard on nights when there are only 3 of us here.
Yeah.
So,
And there's an alternate that's applied, that's assigned to this ZBA, and apparently when somebody doesn't show up, they don't contact the.
there's no follow-up. Yes, I got that too. So,
Not fair to them.
there's our discussion. And the question is, on the motion, shall we postpone this evening? Tom, would you like to vote on that?
The motion was made because you understood that's what they wanted to do.
Yes.
I'll vote yes for the motion then.
And I'm gonna vote yes for the reason we just discussed, because the applicant did request that we postpone.
Okay,
And I'm okay
Peter,
with that.
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Your request is postponed until next month. Okay? Thank you all for coming this evening. Sorry we couldn't conclude this evening. I know we'll get to this and get it resolved at a point in time.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, something happened to the rest of my agenda. Give me the rest of my agenda. Thanks. Why don't I have that? Let's see. Mine doesn't have that on the back.
Oh.
Tom, are you leaving now? I'm surprised.
You did it.
Well, we moved past, the public hearing and, there is no decision.
Seven.
Yeah, I know, we're on number 7. We're ready for public comment on non-agenda items, and I want to make sure there wasn't anybody left in the room at that point. Seeing no one, now we can talk about concerns of the members, the Director of Planning and Zoning, and always the recording secretary. What are your concerns tonight, Janice? Yeah, having a care in the world, do you?
That they're going to come back different dimensions if they take that porch off.
It's gonna be, they're gonna be asking for less than they originally asked for. That's right. So, what are your concerns, Fletcher? What needs to be remedied?
I think ultimately what previous applicants are doing is making something more conforming when they come back, which is always great. And I think it's not a concern, but really good news that the legal notice was vague enough to accommodate these types of changes.
Excellent. And who gets who gets credit for that? Well done. Okay. That's excellent. Members' concerns. I know you have a concern about this method of letting people come back.
It occurred to me that in addressing the people, the applicants, after all of this has been presented in front of them, irrespective of whether there's 5 members here or not, they might be an opportunity for them to withdraw and regroup and
Yeah.
come back again.
An interesting thought. You think we ought to offer that always?
So we should
You
offer that
always offer that
every time.
opportunity.
We should always offer.
We just did.
It would still require us to put, the result is exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's a postponement.
Yeah.
And we've done that before, didn't we? Wasn't that the issue that?
Well, last time, wasn't it kind of the issue of maybe
Yeah.
you want to kind of work on this a little bit?
Yeah.
And they went off and
Worked
worked
on
on
it.
it with Fletcher and
Yeah, nothing.
solved the problem. And there was nothing appealable.
The issue I have, and this is for the township board to decide, is whether the board would feels comfortable with this way of doing this, you know, with us allowing the applicant to hear the concerns of the ZBA and then go back to the drawing board, because it is an expenditure to some degree of a resource of, you know, you opening up the town hall, you're having Fletcher here, you're having Janice here. That's probably my primary concern. But on the other hand, I think it can be helpful for some applicants to go back to the drawing board and decide whether it's a reasonable, what they're asking for is reasonable. And, yeah, I understand Tom's concern, but I think, you know, we've had situations where we've had 5 of us here and said, do you want to put this off? You know, just not,
You've heard the people talk about how they're gonna vote again.
Yeah.
Do you actually want us to do it?
do you want us to do it? Yeah, and maybe this is to be a little bit more judicious. I don't know. Maybe that's not the right word. Should we allow that opportunity when there's all 5 of us here?
Well,
We always say it when there's less than 5.
I made my suggestion because to begin with, when we first had our 74 zoning ordinance, we didn't have a director of planning and zoning. We had a zoning inspector that knew nothing about what he'd volunteered to do. And I was also chairman of both the the zoning board and the ZBA. And so people would come to me and they'd say, what do you think? And I'd say, well, this is what the ordinance says. And I would make suggestions on what they might do to not require a variance. That's my fool phone telling me time to go get a glass of water.
Okay.
Yeah. I would always tell them, this is what you can do, but you don't have to, but you don't need a variant. And then they'd look at me and they'd say, well, we're gonna try it, we're gonna take our chances. And so they came in and they got shot down. Or they prevailed.
Or they didn't. Yes.
And some people, some applicants are hard-nosed. They think that they're right. And maybe they are, but they think they're right. And so they don't care what kind of advice they get from the Director of Planning and Zoning. They
Yeah, well, I think that's our system is you talk to the director and the director says, well, here's how you can do it, or he says you can't do that without a variance and.
have those people caucus back there and trying to decide what, that's gut wrenching.
I agree with you that it is, and sometimes people don't make the right decision.
I
But
think that we ought to
in any event,
try to mitigate if we can.
okay, but so do you then approve of the concept of saying to any applicant who's heard our discussions, what do you think? Do you want us to vote, or do you want to
Absolutely,
work on this for a little bit?
yes.
Okay. All right. Any other concerns of members? Hearing none. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Good thing this meeting wasn't last time.
This is not a concern.